Now, what about if it's in the other quadrants? Well, we don't really need to worry about checking that. We can just use an else here. There are only 4 quadrants. We just handled 2 of them. If it's not in the top left or the bottom right, then it has to be in the top right or the bottom left. Let's just do the same thing, except now we're only going to change the green component. We're keeping the green component and we're eliminating both the red and the blue. Notice here, though, that I'm doing the same thing twice. I'm not a fan of repeating code. And in the future, what if I change the variables? I have to change it in multiple places. So let me just move that out of the if and just do it in one place. Call that refactoring code. We're just simplifying the code, making it easier to read and easier to update in the future. All right, let's give this one a try. Let's see if this actually worked. Okay, that ran. Reopen our image. And there we go. We have red, green, green, red. So we have the pattern working. We're not done. Obviously, we have to get the whole image, but we have the pattern correct. And so we've moved towards the pattern. So now I have a task for all of you. I need to do this. And in order to do that, I need to edit this line here. How should I change this line in order for this to become this? So if you had this line of code, whoops, sorry, that went to one person. If you had this line of code, how would you change it to work with the whole image? Remember, this image is 800 by 600 pixels. We need to call checker pattern so that the entire image is checkered. So what values for those last 3 arguments? And just to help you, just to say we have the height and width when we have access to it, right? So here, let me print out the height of the image. And that's why it didn't work. And then here's the width of the image. If I run this, it's 600 by 800. So how do I change that code to get 600 by 800 or to keep that there? So take a couple of minutes and put your answers in chat when you figure out what am I going to do? How do I solve this? No one has any idea so far. Remember, start row, start column, length. Start row, start column, length. You can see it at the top there. Start row, start column, length. 00800, 00600. I don't think I would use the 800 and 600, but you could accomplish the same thing, right? If I put in, that's the 600. Let's do the 600 first. But instead of saying 600, I just want to use the height of the image. The reason I want to use the height of the image is this should work on other images, not just the cat. Obviously, I want it to work for the cat, but what if I want it to work on other images? Ooh, that was an error. List index out of range. Wasn't expecting an error on that one. Let's make sure I did it correctly. 100, 100, height image. Oh, I forgot to do the 0, 0. By the way, we'll fix those other problems that I just had in a minute. Thank you for, yeah, started at 0, 0. I did not start at 0, 0. Okay. Here's 600. Okay. At least we're starting in the top right. We're starting in the right place. Obviously, we didn't cover the entire cat. So someone said width. Let's run it with the width. And now we're out of range again. So why are we out of range? This time it wasn't me starting in the wrong place. Let's think about what happened here. End row, start row, 0. Length, 800. Are there 800 pixels in the image? Actually, no. So what's going to happen? At some point during this loop, we're going from 0 to 800. When we hit 600, we are now out of bounds. This right here is going to crash because we're going to go out of bounds at 600. We need to stop at 600. So that means we need to put in some sanity checking. We need to put in some parameter checking. And the way we do that is we check if the length is greater than the height. And let me just do this. If the length is greater than the height, when do we stop? What about if we stop at the height? However, didn't we already see a problem with me start at 100 and going to height beyond? We actually don't want to start there. If the length is greater than the height, we have to stop at the edge of the image. We just have to stop at the edge of the image. However, if the length is less than the height, then we can go to whatever the length is. And we have to do the same thing for the width, because what if this image was backwards? What if we had an image that was taller than it was wide? We would have the same problem. So we should protect our code just to make sure both versions don't error out. So now, if the width is greater than, if the length is greater than the width, then we just stop at the edge of the image. If otherwise, we just go to whatever the start plus length is. So when we do 600 by 800, or sorry, when we do 800 for length, this one will stop at 600, and this one will stop at use the 800 because it'll actually use this one. Let's actually see if this worked. Shouldn't see an error anymore. And let's check our cat. And our cat is now complete, mostly. I mean, it looks exactly like it was supposed to look. We have solved the cat. But that doesn't mean we've solved everything, right? I just found a couple of problems, a couple of edge cases. There could be other edge cases. I'm not sure. I know one thing that we should do is down here, instead of actually, what if this image, what if I didn't know the height, or if this image I didn't know which was bigger, height or width? Well, then if it was a 900 height by a 600 width, this would actually print the wrong way. So we should let the computer choose based on the maximum. Let the computer figure out. So that's going to be one of the things that might or might not work. This should still work. That shouldn't have actually changed anything. It just means on a different image that was taller than wider, it still would work perfectly. And I don't think that changed anything. Yeah, it still works. So that was one problem that we could have had. Does anybody see any other problems? Think about in a minute if there's any other problems that you can see. Well, you already saw me do 100. And by the way, that should still work. Now, this shouldn't be an error anymore. 100 by 100. Remember, it caused me an error. That should not cause an error. Oh, except it did. So obviously, there's still a problem in here with one of these things. Honestly, it probably should be start row plus length and start column plus length. So now it's just going to stop at the edges. Hey, no error this time. Let's see if the cat actually worked. Remember, we started at 100, 100 this time, but we gave it the full size and it didn't error out. This isn't what we asked for, but this is actually now error-free in that regard. What other weird edge cases do we have? What about something like 1,000, 2,000? Remember, our image is 600 by 800. What's going to happen if I go 1,000, 2,000? It ran. Hey, it actually worked. I'm surprised. It's probably because we did a couple of things that fixed it. I was expecting that to crash, to be honest, but it didn't crash. And it's actually, I think, this thing right here that kept it from crashing. If I took this out, no, it still worked. Sometimes it's funny when you accidentally cover a case that you weren't really trying to cover. It's not crashing anymore. That's good. Let me put those back. I was expecting it to crash. But we should always do bounds checking. So if the start row is greater than or equal to height, this might be something that we tell the user that, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. Start row column values are invalid. It's usually a good idea. Oh, and then we should return. We didn't do anything. We could return the original image or we can return none. So now start row column values are invalid. So bounds checking is important, making sure that you're getting valid inputs. It didn't cause an error, and it's probably because of the way we wrote this. It didn't stop, probably because the range was invalid. But what happens if we did something like a negative number, right? What if we did a negative number? I don't even, by the way, does anybody know what's going to happen if I do a negative number? Let's do negative 100, negative 2. You know what's going to happen? Is it going to crash? Is it going to run? What's it going to do? That's interesting, isn't it? Remember, Python lists have negative indices. So all it did was shift it. And you can see that it shifted it. And I'm not going to go through why that happened. I'm not too concerned about it. I just know it's a problem. But that means you would need to update your code to check for negative indices to make sure this doesn't happen as well. You could zero them out, or you could just return an error. I would return the error. Let me put everything back the way it was, though, just so that we actually have the final version. We run it one more time, make sure our cat is doing cat-like things. And we have our valid cat. We're back to normal. Everything's good. We're happy with it. Just probably update this to not take negative numbers. I'm not going to go do through it, but I mean, we could. Let's actually think about it. Or start row less than 0, or and maybe even less than equal 0, because what would a 0, 0 be? I'm not sure. No, 0 is fine, actually. We wouldn't be less than 0. Start column less than 0. I know that got pretty long, and it shouldn't have changed anything for us. But if I put the negatives in there, it should tell me that there's a problem. So we just want to make sure that we cover these error cases. There may be others in here. I don't know. We've caught a lot of them, but there may be more. Okay, so let's actually do some exercises now that we've, and by the way, you should, when you get time later on, go through the slides, because it goes through a kind of a process that's very similar than what we did here. Talked about blocking out a region and checking all that out. We did the red and white. We did white out of a region for the blackout, but it talks about a whole bunch of things. We didn't actually do those exercises. That's still part of the process. Handling edge cases, that's more of the process, right? Different image sizes, what if they're changed, what different rows, all of these edge cases should be checked.